Good morning, everyone. Trust that you are all well. So this morning, we would like to discuss about a very important concept that I'm going to be discussing with the Rabbonim a bit later on today, and that is the concept of boundaries. Let me start with the idea, and then we can think about the application. So we are familiar that we say at the beginning of the Amidah, Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. There's the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Why do we have to use these three different phrases? Why couldn't we just say, like we say afterwards, that it's the God of our forefathers? Why do we have to divide them up? And the Zohar and other Sforim explain in relation to the forefathers and the matriarchs that each one possessed and embodied a different characteristic, a different midah. So if we think about the stories in Bereshis relating to Abraham Avinu, so we find that he was known for chesed. He was a Baal chesed, somebody who was expansive, was kind, was caring, and wanted to perform acts of loving kindness. You know, he was in excruciating pain, and yet all he wanted to do was, when these three guests appeared at his tent, was to perform acts of hospitality. His whole life was about chesed, about kindness, about bringing people close together and showering them with love. Contrast that with Isaac, with Yitzchak, his son. It was known for Gvura. Gvura is strength, it's discipline, it's boundaries. It's worth it working within constraints. So we have these two very different personalities. Abraham is expansive. There's no limitations. Whatever you want, whatever you need, I'm here for you. And Yitzchak is the exact opposite, diametrically opposed to the path that was forged by his father. He's all about, no, we have to work in a disciplined way. This is within, this is within, and this is without. What's interesting, and we can take this a step farther. Good morning, all. Good morning, Peter, Clarice, Stan, and Andrea. A rare treat that I'm actually able to broadcast from my study in a bit of a calmer fashion. So we've spoken so far, just for those that are coming through the door, about firstly about Abraham. Abraham, we know, is all embodied chesed, kindness, and it was all expansive. And we spoke about Isaac, Yitzchak, being diametrically opposed to the way of his father, being somebody who was exceptionally boundary disciplined, and therefore there was a clear delineation, a line between what he would do, what he wouldn't do, what he felt was acceptable or wasn't. Now, if we have a look, and we take this a stage further, so we find in the Sforim as follows, that each of them married somebody who was very different to themselves. So Abraham married Sarah, and we know that a wife is referred to as an Ezer Kenegdo, literally a helpmate that is opposite them. But what it means in this context is it was somebody who helped them by being opposite. In other words, the characteristic that Abraham had is the exact opposite of what Sarah had, They were a counterbalance to each other. So Abraham was chesed, was kindness, was loving everyone and including everyone. There was no limitations. Everyone can come through my door. And Sarah, we see, had a very clear idea and perspective as to where things start and where they need to finish. So, for example, Yishmael, who was born to Hagar, was living in the house of Abraham. She saw firsthand this was a bad influence and potentially detrimental to the upbringing, the nurturing, the education and parenting that she was trying to instill in her son Isaac and Yitzchak. And therefore, what did she do? She told Abraham in no uncertain terms, I'm sorry, there's a place for chesed, there's a place for kindness, and this child needs to be on the other side. He has to be out the house, because it's going to have a detrimental, devastating impact on Yitzchak, and therefore chesed has to have a boundary, a border, and therefore she sent him away. We look at Yitzchak, we see that he was very much all about discipline, like followed his mother's line. It was about boundaries, and yet Rivka we know, was all about, like her father-in-law, it was all about chesed and kindness. How do I know? Think about Rebecca, where she met Eliezer. Rivka met Eliezer by the well, and instantly she was the one who offered, don't worry, I'm going to give to you to drink, my master, and I'm going to give to your servants to drink, and I'm going to give to the camels, and I'm going to keep performing acts of kindness and giving until there's no end to it, until everyone is satiated, everyone's needs are taken care of. There was no boundaries. So therefore we see that Abraham finds this counterbalance and counterweight in Sarah, and Yitzchak in Rivka, and Yaakov was a synthesis of Abraham and Yitzchak. In other words, he was a fusion of the chesed and gvura and boundaries and discipline. And that's really the way it has to be, because if a person is all about giving, loving, you can love to death, they say. In other words, if I love everyone and there's no end to it, then that devalues the love. Now, and no one can do anything wrong, everything's good, and therefore, be it somebody who's doing, something that's wrong, somebody who's a thief, somebody who's dishonest. No, we just see the good in them, we love them, we don't say anything, we don't draw a line, and it devalues the concept of love. They call it tough love, don't they? Tough love means sometimes saying no. And one of the ideas I heard by a psychologist is sometimes if we are able to have boundaries and to say no, it means the yes is a real yes. It means it's a carefully considered and thought out yes. If it is that, I just say yes to everything, so it's not, it doesn't mean anything. It's not considered, it's not contemplated. But if I actually really have thought about it and I want to say yes, I accept your invitation, then that means the authentic me, the real me, is able to show up and be totally present. I want to be here. It's not because I just can't say no. It's because I really, really have thought about it and I'm all in. And therefore, sometimes we have to say no. We have to say no. We have to live in a boundary fashion. It's part of being Jewish. If you think about the beginning of the Torah, what do we find? God set clear boundaries for the good of mankind. What was the boundary? All the trees of the Gan Eden, or the Garden of Eden, you can eat, but one of them you can't. Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, that you can't. Clear boundary. And what was the job of Adam and Eve? La'avda al'shamra, to guard and to keep. In other words, to know and to understand that there is good, there is bad, that there is a clear boundary. And if you go through the Torah, you'll see it time and again. At key moments, at seismic moments, there was always a clear boundary. Sinai is another classic example where a boundary was put around the camp. Different boundaries were placed. And therefore, we need to think about our relationships. We live in a world which is boundaryless, where anything and everything goes. Your space is my space, and there is no end. But if there isn't an end to me, then where do you begin? Where's the space in between? Where's that mutual respect and understanding? And there isn't an authentic me if there isn't an honesty, an integrity, a security in who I am and who you are. And that's something for us to really think about. I think very often we don't have these conversations or these thought processes, and therefore we end up situations where we feel compromised, or we compromise on who we are, and therefore we make sacrifices of the self, and very much, later on, or even sometimes in the immediacy, we regret it. We feel that we weren't able to truly be ourselves. And therefore, we have to be comfortable in who we are and ensure that we create environments and spaces where we have that comfortability. And if I could go through, so many of the laws of the Torah, from the laws of yichud, seclusion, from the interactions between different sexes. If you think about, we put up a marker, a railing around an area. And why did the Torah have to command us? Isn't it obvious? We know that there's a space there that's dangerous. Anyone, even a non-Jew, would put it up. What's the mitzvah? the mitzvah is us to have that awareness that we have to have a clear boundary, that we have to know sometimes we have to take off. We don't go right to the edge. We have to make sure that we stand away from the edge and we put up a railing. And even though it means we may not get as close to the edge as we may want to, it's worth it for our own safety and security, and for the safety and security of the other people. So please God, we should all be able to take this lesson to heart, this important insight and tool, which we'll keep in our toolbox. And in that way, please God, we'll be able to see great things. We'll be comfortable, secure in who we are, and everyone else will be secure and safe, and with a feeling of mutual respect between us in who they are. Have a great day. Great to see you. We'll see you tomorrow, same time.